You ever hear of a Wendigo? No? Yeah, most people haven't. Not really, anyways. They think it's just some old folklore, creepy stories meant to keep kids from wandering too far into the woods. I used to think that too. Then I saw one. It was about 4 years ago, mid-December. My cousin Jake had this off-grid cabin way up north in Minnesota, like damn near to Canada. Real middle of nowhere stuff. No neighbors, no cell signal, just trees for miles and miles. He moved out of there after his divorce, said he wanted peace and quiet, which he definitely got, but I think the quiet started messing with him. He called me a few times that winter. At first, it was just random stuff. How deep the snow was, how he was running low on propane. Then he started talking about something watching him in the woods. Said it was tall, real thin, with antlers. Thought it was a moose at first, but then he swore it walked on 2 legs. Kept saying it was too quiet out there. Then he could hear it breathing at night. I figured he was drinking too much, or maybe just got a little stir crazy. Told him to come back to the city for a bit, but he wouldn't. Last thing he said before going dark was, "If something happens to me, don't come looking." I thought he was being dramatic, but then he stopped answering altogether. No text, no calls. So yeah, like an idiot, I went looking. Drove as far as I could, then snowshoed the last couple miles through this thick-ass forest. Wind howling the whole time. When I got to the cabin, I knew right away something was wrong. The front door was wide open, like it had been busted or left to swing in the wind. Snow was blowing inside. I stepped in, and the place looked like it had been trashed. Furniture flipped over, books torn up, claw marks, actual claw marks, scratched into the floorboards, and blood. Not a lot, but enough to stop me in my tracks. Right by the front door, dried and dark. I started yelling for Jake, checking every room, but the place was empty. Then I found his notebook, one of those little black moleskins he always carried. It was wedged underneath the floorboards. His last few entries were, man, they were rough. He wasn't right in the head. He wrote about something watching him. Said it could mimic voices. Said it called his name from the woods. Last entry just said, "Jake is dead. I'm not Jake anymore." I stayed one night, just one. I figured I'd rest, head back at first light, maybe find a ranger on my way. I stacked furniture against the door and got the fire going. Found Jake's old rifle and kept it close. Sometime after midnight, I heard it. First, it was footsteps, slow and crunching in the snow just outside the cabin. Then a voice. Not a loud one, just a whisper, right outside the window. It said my name, Ryan. And I swear to God it sounded just like Jake. Almost, but not quite. Like someone trying to copy his voice but getting it just a little off. Too slow, too flat, unnatural. Then it knocked. 2 slow knocks on the door. I didn't move, barely breathed. Rifle aimed at the door, heart pounding out of my chest. The voice kept going. "Ryan, let me in. I'm cold." The way it said it didn't sound desperate. It sounded hungry. I stayed like that for hours, just sitting there with the fire cracking and that thing pacing around outside. Sometimes it scratched at walls, sometimes it just stood there. I couldn't see it, not really, but I could feel it watching me. Eventually it stopped, just gone, dead quiet again. When morning came, I opened the door real slow, nothing out there. No footprints in the snow, like it had just vanished. But there were scratches, 2 long gouges on the door, too high up for any animal I know. I didn't bother grabbing anything else, just booked it back to the truck and got the hell out of there. They never found Jake. No tracks, no body, nothing. Official story is he probably got lost in a storm, froze to death somewhere. But I know better. I know what I heard, what I felt out there. It wasn't human. It wasn't even pretending that well. And here's the thing that gets me the most. It didn't try to break in. It didn't smash the windows or tear through the door. It waited for me to open it. Like it needed me to let it in. So yeah, laugh if you want. Call it a bad dream, the cold, whatever. But if you ever find yourself in the woods, deep woods, the kind where the silence presses in on you, and you hear someone calling your name, someone you know damn well isn't there, don't answer, and for the love of God, don't open the door. So this thing happened a couple years back when I was working construction down in New Mexico. Small town, nothing fancy, just a contract gig to help rebuild part of a high school after a fire. Me and a few other guys rented this cheap little house just outside town. Real old place, right on the edge of the desert. Nearest neighbors was probably a mile away. The crew was mostly locals except for me and this guy Brandon, who I didn't know super well. He was quiet, kept to himself, but we shared a room, so we ended up talking a bit. He mentioned he had a family on a reservation, a few hours north, and warned me, dead serious, never to whistle at night. I laughed, of course. Figure it was just some superstition, but he didn't. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't whistle, ever. Not out here. You don't want something thinking you're calling to it." I wish I had listened. So one night, middle of the week, we're sitting out on the back porch after work. It's me, Brandon, and two of the local guys. We're drinking, swapping dumb stories, and I, being the smartass, decided to test this whole whistling thing. I didn't even remember what tune I did. Something stupid like the Andy Griffith theme. The second I did it, the mood shifted. The locals went dead quiet. Brandon stood up, muttered something in Navajo, and went inside. The other guys didn't say anything either. They just looked at me, pale-faced, then followed him in. I was left sitting there, half drunk and a little embarrassed. That night, I woke up to Brandon shaking me. Not rough, but enough to snap me out of sleep fast. He whispered, "Something's outside. Don't move." At first, I thought he was screwing with me, but then I heard it. Something walking, slow, heavy steps circling the house. It wasn't an animal, too steady, too upright. Then it started tapping on the windows. Not knocking, tapping. Light and fast, like fingernails. First the window in the living room, then the one in the kitchen, then our room. I held my breath, then I heard my voice, outside the window. It said, "Brandon, hey, come out here, I need help." I didn't even recognize it at first, because it sounded just like me. But the tone was all wrong, flat, like a bad impression. Then it did it again, same words, same voice, but this time it laughed after. And the laugh sounded nothing like mine. Brandon grabbed his bag, he always kept it next to his bed, and pulled out this small pouch. Started sprinkling something at the window and whispering under his breath. I had no clue what it was, but I stayed quiet. The thing outside started scratching then, just dragging something. Nails, claws, I don't know, across the window. Not hard enough to break it, just enough to make that high-pitched screech. Then it said one more thing. I'm already inside. I almost pissed myself right then. Brandon jumped up, checked the door, still locked. Nothing in the house looked out of place, but the scratching stopped. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I checked around the house. No footprints, no tracks. But the windows, each one had a long, thin scratch on the outside of the glass, like someone had dragged knives across them. Brandon didn't come back to the site that day. He drove out to see his family and didn't return for 2 more days. When he came back, he handed me a little leather pouch filled with something. Herbs, bones, I don't know. And said, "Keep this on you, always." I did. About a week later, we're working late, cleaning up after a long pour. Sun's just gone down. Brandon went back to the house early. Wasn't feeling great. Me and the 2 guys stayed behind to wrap up. By the time I got back, it was pitch black. I walked up the porch and see Brandon sitting in the dark. Doesn't say anything, just sits there, staring at me. I say, "You good?" No answer. I get closer and he smiles, but it's wrong. Way too wide, teeth too straight, and his eyes, they're not Brandon's eyes. Too dark. No reflection, just black. I stopped cold. Then he said, "Told you not to whistle." I backed away slowly. I had the pouch in my pocket, gripped it hard, and started whispering the words he told me. I didn't know what they meant, but I said them anyways. The thing smiled again, stood up, and just walked off the porch. Smooth, no sound, like it floated. 2 minutes later, the real Brandon pulls up in his truck. I didn't even say anything, just pointed to the chair where it had been. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and said, "It's testing you now." We finished the job and got back out of there 2 weeks later. I've never been back. But sometimes, late at night, I'll hear it again. Usually when I'm alone, tapping on the window, calling my name in my own damn voice. And I know it's still out there, still wearing my face. I'm not the kind of guy who believes in cryptids or whatever you want to call them. No UFOs, no ghosts, no lizard people running the government. I'm a concrete guy. Literally, I pour driveways for a living. But what I saw one weekend up in the Rockies made me rethink everything. It was late September, still warm enough to sleep in a tent, but cold enough at nights to keep the bugs away. Me and two buddies, Chris and Joel, decided to do a little off-grid camping up near Red Feather. Not a campsite, no fire rings or picnic tables. Just a little clearing Joel found on a hunting trip, about 2 miles from the nearest trailhead. Perfect spot to unplug and knock back some beers. We hiked in Friday afternoon, set up camp, got a fire going, cooked some hot dogs, usual stuff. Around midnight, we were sitting around the fire, halfway through a bottle of whiskey, just talking trash. Then we heard it. Snap. Loud, like a thick branch breaking. Not close, maybe 30, 40 yards out, enough to get our attention. Joel turned his head listening. He's ex-military, real serious type. Said, "You hear that?" I was like, "Yeah, probably, dear." But then it happened again. Snap, crunch, snap. It wasn't moving like a deer. It sounded like it was circling us. Slow. Big steps. Too heavy to be anything small. We all went quiet. Chris, who's usually the loudmouth, whispered, "You think it's a bear?" We all stood up, grabbing our flashlights and knives. Nothing fancy, just pocket blades. We started scanning the tree line, but couldn't see much, just shadows and tall pines. Then it let out this noise. I swear to God, it sounded like a mix between a growl and a howl. Deep, low, and long, like it came from something with a massive chest. It didn't sound scared, it sounded pissed. Joel said, "We're not alone. Get in the tent now." We dove in like kids afraid of the dark. Sat there, all three of us, packed in tight, knives in hand, whiskey breath thick in the air. None of us slept. Every couple minutes we'd hear movement outside. Branches breaking, heavy footfalls, breathing. Actual breathing. Like whatever it was standing just beyond the tent. We could hear it exhaling, slow and deep, like it was sniffing us. Then something brushed the side of the tent. I damn near screamed. Joel clamped a hand over my mouth and whispered, "Don't move, don't speak." That thing circled us 3 or 4 more times, then silence. We didn't sleep at all. At first light, we packed up so fast we left half our stuff behind. Just stuffed what we could into our bags and hauled ass back to the truck. But here's the part that sticks with me. When we got back to the truck, Joel stopped me and said, "Don't tell anyone about this, not unless they were there, you hear me?" And I was like, "Dude, what the hell was that?" He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I've heard that sound before, in Afghanistan, except it wasn't any animal. It was a guy in my unit who disappeared during a patrol. They found his boots, nothing else." I laughed it off at the time, thought he was just being dramatic. Until a couple weeks later, I went back up there by myself, just for a day hike. I wanted to grab the gear we left behind. Same trail, same spot. I get to the clearing and guess what? Tent shredded, not just ripped, shredded. Poles snapped, fabric and ribbons. The cooler we left, crushed, like something sat on it. And right in the middle of the clearing, a pile of rocks, carefully stacked, like a marker or something. And on top of it, my knife, the same one I dropped in panic. No blood, no footprints, just that damn stack of rocks sitting there like a message. I didn't take the knife. I didn't take anything. I turned around and got the hell out of there. Haven't been back since. So yeah, laugh if you want. Call it Bigfoot, call it whatever. But I know what I heard. I know what I felt. That thing wasn't just big. It was smart. It wanted us to know that we were being watched. Hunted maybe. Tested. I don't go camping off trail anymore. And if you do, just listen real close when the forest goes quiet. Something might be listening back.